Today I read Eerie Elementary. The hall monitors are fired. Chapter 3. From bad to worse. Sam's day got worse and worse. In fact, it was an awful day for all three of Eerie Elementary's hall monitors. First, Lucy got in trouble. She was holding the door when it jumped from her hand and slammed in Mrs. Grinker's face. It looked like Lucy had slammed the door on purpose. Mrs. Grinker gave her a warning. And Nathaniel got in trouble next. It was just before recess, and everyone was at their lockers. And Nathaniel set his backpack down, but it leaped into the middle of the hallway, right beneath Mrs. Grinker's feet. She scolded him too. It felt like the school trying to get us in trouble, and Nathaniel said to his friend as they walked outside. During recess, things got worse. The hall monitors were by the jungle gym when Mrs. Nickleby walked over. Mrs. Nickleby was the old man who took care of Eerie Elementary. It was Mr. Nickleby who had chosen Sam to be the school's hall monitor. He had shown Sam the horrible truth about the monstrous school. Mr. Nickleby said, "I have to trim some trees in front of the school. Would you three mind getting the field ready for kickball showdown?" "Sure, Lucy and I can set up the bleachers," and Nathaniel said. "I'll clean off the bases and inflate the kickballs." He grabbed a broom and followed his friend to the field. Sam was sweeping home plate when he felt a twisting and tangling inside his gut. As home monitor, Sam could sense things that other students could not. He could feel when something was wrong. Right now, Sam had that feeling. He looked up. The metal backstop loomed over him. Creak! Wind whipped across the field, and the backstop shook. Sunlight danced and shined on the metal fence. Sam could not pull his eyes away from it. He felt like he was falling into a trance. Sam saw a face. It was the face of his ultimate enemy, Eerie, and the face was staring at him. Ring! The sound snapped Sam out of his trance. "That's the bell, Sam," Lucy yelled. "We need to head inside." "But I still need to inflate the kickballs," Sam called back. "Will it help?" and Nathaniel shouted. He and Lucy hurried over. Sam grabbed in an air pump and inflated the kickballs. Lucy and Nathaniel helped. They were finishing when, ring! "The second ball," Sam exclaimed. "Now we're really late." Sam placed the pump near the beach ball. But then he and his friends raced inside, but they soon skipped to a stop. Mrs. Grinker was waiting for them in the classroom doorway. The classmates were already seated. "I'm fed up with you three," Mrs. Grinker barked. "Sam, you have been late twice today. Lucy and Nathaniel, your behavior has been unacceptable." "But," Sam began. She interrupted him. "As punishment, you will stay all day after school today. You will scrub the gum from beneath every classroom desk." Sam's classmates said, "Ouch!" Mrs. Grinker glared at Sam and Nathaniel and Lucy. "You better shape up, or you won't be the hall monitor much longer." Suki's Sacrabian. Chapter 4. School was over, and the messy job of scraping gum had begun. Mrs. Grinker was at her desk scraping pink paper. She looked up every few moments, keeping an eye on the three students. Sam was on his back, staring up at the desk. Dozens of hot, dried bubble gum blobs started the desk bottom. "Gross," he muttered. And Nathaniel and Lucy were beneath the desk too. "Who chewed all this gum?" and Nathaniel whispered. "Not me," Lucy replied. They each used a wooden ruler to chip away at the bright neon-colored gum. Flaky bits of dried gum sprinkled down onto their faces. Mrs. Grinker stood. "I'm heading to the teacher's lodge. When I return, every desk better be gum-free." Mrs. Grinker shut the door. Instantly, Sam's gum felt tight. It was the same feeling he had early. Clatter, clatter, clatter. "Sam, your desk!" Lucy said. The desk above Sam was shaking. The metal feet rattled. It was particularly jumping. And then, clank, zoom. The desk leaped into the air. Sam rolled out of the way just before. Slam. The desk crashed into the floor. Lucian and Antonio scrambled out from beneath their desk. "Stay calm," Antonio said. "Easy for you to say," Sam replied. "It was my desk that did a backflip." "Wait, what's that?" asked Lucy. The friends inched towards the overturned desk. A purple blob of gum were blobbing out the bottom of the desk. It seemed to be growing bigger and bigger. Then whoosh! A lump of wet gum whipped past Sam's face. He whirled around. Chunks of gum were flying across the room. It was like invisible hands were throwing them. Hundreds of globs of gum started joining together. A massive, monstrous ball of gum was forming. "What's happening?" Lucy asked. "Whenever it is, I don't want to be here for it," Antonio said. "Follow me," Sam sped towards the desk, but suddenly a gummy tentacle crutched like a whip, slammed its neck against Sam's wrist and ankle. His arm, the sticky tentacle hurled Sam into a bookshelf. "Sam!" Lucy cried out. More nail-colored tentacles lit from the gigantic ball and snapped towards Sam. They yanked him off his feet. "The gum has got me!" Sam kicked and fought, but he had just become more stuck. Orange and pink gum surrounded him. He was sinking into the great gummy. Chewed out. Chapter 5. The monstrous web of bubble gum was allowed to swallow Sam whole. He couldn't wrestle free from the sticky mess. Lucy's eye blinked. Sam was being gobbled up by a gobble gum monster. Lucy's wet strands of gobble gum slitted across Sam's face. The sting of sticky sweetness filled his nostrils. Soon, only bits of Sam were visible. One sneaker jutted out from the huge, colorful ball. Two hands poked through the mess. "We're supposed to chew gum," Antonio said. "Gum isn't supposed to chew us." "We have to pull him out," Lucy cried. They dashed towards their friend, and Antonio grabbed Sam's hand. Lucy took Sam's foot. They pulled and tugged and blop. Sam trembled out of the bubble gum monster. The three friends crashed into Mrs. Crinker's desk. Clunk, woo! A wet, monstrous howl filled the room. Lucy scoot up to the pen and held it like a tiny squid. The bubble grew bigger and came closer. Lucy thrust the pen into the bubble pop. It burst. It was the biggest blast of bubble gum in the history of bubble gum plastic. Sticky goo mass splattered everywhere. "Yuck!" Lucy exclaimed as she pulled gum from her hair. Slam! The door flew open. Mrs. Crinker's eyes blipped as she stared at the strange mess. Gum dripped from the walls. Sting of pink and orange goo hung from the ceiling. Mrs. Crinker was furious. Sam wouldn't have been surprised if steam started coming out of her ears. "That's it," Mrs. Crinker growled. You are done being home monitors." Chapter 6. Hanging It Over. "Bubblegum is everywhere," Mrs. Crinker exclaimed in Principal Wing's office. "I don't know how the third graded created such a huge, sticky mess." Sam, Lucy, and Antonio stood before their principal. Mrs. Crinker was arguing that they should be fired from their home monitors' jobs. Principal Wing's mouth was a tight, steaming line. Mr. Nickleby was there too. He had been listening silently, but now he stepped forward. "Principal Wing," Mr. Nickleby began, "Sam was a very responsible home monitor, and Lucy and Antonio are the best assistant home monitors this school has ever had." Mrs. Crinker scolded. Lucy closed the door in my face. "It wasn't me," Lucy started. Mrs. Crinker interrupted, and Antonio tripped me. "I didn't," Antonio began to say. Mrs. Crinker slammed her hands down in Principal Wing's desk. "Being a home monitor is a very special privilege. Students who get detention, who are tardy, and who cause bubble gum explosion cannot be home monitors." Principal Wing stood up. "I agree. You three are fired. Sam, please turn in your sash." Sam swallowed. He couldn't believe this was happening. Sam's hand trembled as he pulled the bright orange sash from his backpack. Mr. Nickleby had given him the sash on his first day as home monitor. It was a symbol of the home monitor power. The moment he handed it to Principal Wing, Sam felt weak. He felt like the wind had been knocked out of him. Sam remembered that Mr. Nickleby had told him months early, "As home monitor, you have the ability to sense the school, to see and feel and hear what others cannot." Principal Winky stuffed the sash into the desk drawer. One last thing, he said. Sam, Lucy, and Notino, you will not be participating in tomorrow's kickball showdown. Instead, you three will scrub your classroom until it sparkles. Sam and his friends slunk down the hall. Mr. Nickleby followed them outside. Spring was just around the corner and the air was warm. The school has not been left unprotected like this in years, Mr. Nickleby said. Unprotected? I don't understand. Lucy said, we're still here. We can still fight. Mr. Nickleby's voice was heavy and said, yes, but you are no longer homunculus. I'm afraid you simply won't be strong enough to battle Eerie Elementary. Sam and his friends dragged their feet to walk home. I don't believe we lost our jobs, Lucy said. How did we let this happen? We didn't let anything happen, Sam said. Ocean Eerie messed with us all day and made us look carbo-homunculus. Another scolded. It like the school was trying to get us fired. Well, it worked, Lucy said. We went fired just in time for kickball showdown. This was all part of Ocean's plan. Sam said. He looked back at the old touring school. We knew that Ocean wants the same thing he always wants, to eat. Sam's word hung in the air. What he said was true and terrifying. In fact, it was so terrifying that Sam and his friends walked the rest of the way home in frightened silence. Up, up, and away. Principal Wing's voice boomed through the open classroom window. Teams, please take the field. It was the next morning and kickball showdown was beginning. Sam, Lucy, and Notino were stuck inside, scrubbing gum. I look like Cinderella's, and Notino said as he scrubbed gum from a window. Yeah, but instead of missing some fancy ball, we're missing kickball showdown, Lucy added. No talking, Mrs. Grinker barked. She was at the desk. It was covered in gum. She stood and marched across the room. I'm going to straighten up the supply closet, but I'll be watching this door. If anyone leaves, you're in big trouble. The door shut. What? A whistle pierced the air. Principal Wing's whistle announced the start of the first inning. Sam, Lucy, and another went to the window teachers, and students were seated in the bleachers. Everyone's out there, and Notino said. And there are no homunculus to stop Ocean from attacking, Lucy said. Guys, we need to find a way to protect everyone, Sam said. And Notino peeked out the door window. He saw Mrs. Grinker at the supply closet. How can we sneak out while she's right there? Just then, splat! A glob of blue bubble gum dropped onto Sam's shoulders. He glanced up. A truant of gum dangled from an air vent in the ceiling. Sam smiled. If we don't walk out that door, Mrs. Grinker won't know we're gone. A moment later, and he was standing on the desk, and Notino and Lucy were hoisting up into the vent. Chapter 8. Terrifying Teeth. Yesterday we were in stuck situation, and Notino said now we're in a tight spot. Sam, Lucy, and Notino were crawling through the air vent. They had to wriggle and wriggle to move forward. Although Sam said the vent splits up ahead, which way will take us closer to the front of the school? Right or left? Let me check, Lucy called. I brought the blueprints of the school. Lucy peered through a crack in the vent. She saw they were above the art room. She squinted to read the blueprints, using them like a map. Principal Swing's office is near the front door, so let's go there, she said as she ran her finger over the blueprints. Take a right here, then a left at the gym, and another left at the lunchroom. Sam crawled to the right. They heard Principal Wing's voice from outside. The second inning starts now. Oh no, Notino said. It's already the second inning. There's only 3 innings left. Ocean's going to attack soon. We need to hurry, Lucy said. Sam scrambled forward. The smells of the lunchroom drifted into the vent. That meant they were closed. Sam wormed his way around the corner. He felt a cold breeze rushing up from an opening. He saw Principal Wing's desk from below. We're here, Sam said. He tried to gently climb down, but instead clutched. His hand plunked through the vent. He crash-landed on Principal Wing's desk. Oh, Sam groaned. He blinked and saw Notino and Lucy peering down at him. Nice landing, Lucy joked. Sam stooped. He helped Lucy and Notino down from the vent. Suddenly, Sam felt like there was something he had to do. He yanked open Principal Wing's desk drawer. I'm taking this back, he said as he grabbed the sash. Relief floated through him. Lucy and Notino smiled at their friend. Now let's get the kickball field and stop Ocean Eerie, Lucy said. She ran out into the hallway, and Notino followed, but as Sam stepped through the office door, The wood cracked. The door was like a trembling mouth with slimy finger. Snap! The door's terrifying teeth bit. Sam held one end and the monstrous mouth at the other.